Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Selling North Georgia podcast. I'm Corey Shields.
I'm Michael Williams.
And today we are going to shift gears just a little bit. We're going to do a sort of a mini series about real estate investing or house flipping. And we're going to do the real world version of it, not the HGTV, having fun, sledgehammers, destroying stuff. We're going to talk about real numbers, a real situation, and what you could realistically expect if you were to pursue real estate investing. So, Michael, what do you think about it? Sound good?
I am looking forward to the real life world of flipping houses. It might seem a little less fun than the HGTV version, but these are legit numbers that we are going to determine if we make money or lose money, because right now that's still up in the air. We don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. So let's kick it off. So we're going to focus on a specific property that you close on in about a week, right?
That's right. Yeah, by the time you guys watch this, we will have closed on this property.
Awesome. So I think the first thing to start off with, the big, I think, difficulty a lot of investors have is actually finding the deal. You make money when you buy. That is a sort of cliche, I think, that is in the investing world. So how did you find this particular deal?
I would say that is a cliche and a stereotype for a reason, because that is often the case. If you pay too much up front, you end up losing money. So where I found the deal, I found the deal from a fellow agent that doesn't work this area all that often, certainly doesn't invest in this area, but does list homes in this area from time to time. And so he had a client that called him and said, hey, I had a tenant that destroyed my house, and I'm thinking about selling it. I don't really want to put a lot of money into it. I'd really like to just unload it and be done. So that agent friend of mine called and said, hey, I'd like to show you this house and see if you'd like to buy it. Don't necessarily want to list it. So I know you're an investor in that marketplace. So, hey, go look at this house and tell me what you think. So that's how I found it.
And so when you went out there, what did you think? How'd that go?
So I went out there, I met with the guy, and I actually met with the seller. And so we walked through it, and on first glance, it didn't look like there was that much to do with the house. So I felt like it was going to be a pretty easy flip. So we were talking about numbers, and just off the cuff, I said, I think we can buy it and probably still make money at 90. So I can probably give you 90. Let me get contractors out here to be sure that my numbers are right. I'm not committing to 90. I'm just telling you what's in my head. One of the things I like to do, because I'm an agent and because I've been doing this a long time, and I have often found that it doesn't make sense to hide the numbers, right? So I told the seller, hey, listen, I think I can sell this for about 135 once it's fixed. I'm offering you 90 because I feel like there's a spread in there that gives me a profit. So my advice to you is, if you want to make the most money, list it with my friend, the other agent. He will market it for you. He's a great marketer. He's a good agent. I've worked with a ton of them. There are some good and some not so good, and he is one of the good guys. So you can feel comfortable listing with him. And I feel like, based on all the comps that we already did the research on, 135 is what we call the ARV, the after repair value. So I said, I feel like I can pay 90 and still make those numbers work.
And so when you were walking around the property, what sort of things are you looking for that might not be totally obvious?
Gotcha. So obviously one of the things that we're looking for, you can look on a tax card and get the square footage. And I think this tax card says we're at 960 square feet. So I can see that from the tax card. It says there's an open front porch. So I can see that there's a front porch. So I'm looking to see what happened with the back porch, right? Is there a back porch? So you get out there, I'm trying to match up what the tax card says and what's actually there. Has there been an addition that maybe the tax card didn't capture? Mm-hmm. So it says 960, is that actually 1100 because they closed in a carport or something? So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. I'm going to assume at 960 square feet that it might be a 2-bedroom. So the tax card doesn't tell me how many bedrooms are in it. So I think it might be a 2-bedroom. It's probably a 2-2 or a 2 1.5 bath. So that's something I'm looking for. Those are things anybody can walk through and see. Because I've done this so many times, I also know that I need to look for weak spots in the floor. I need to see if there's any rotten wood, if there's any peeling paint. I can look at the tax card and see if it was built prior to 1978 or before 1978. 78's an important year because that's when lead-based paint was basically outlawed. So if it's after 78, you don't have any lead-based paint issues. Before 1978, and there's original paint there, you got to make sure that doesn't have lead in it. So some paint did, some paint didn't. You just have to get it tested.
Right.
So those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. I'm looking at the roof. I'm looking at the foundation. I'm looking to see if there's any weak spots along the way. This particular house, there was a back deck, but it was completely caved in. So got to completely redo the back deck. So those kinds of issues, I'm looking to make sure that the HVAC is relatively new, or if it's old, how old is it? This particular instance, we're going to have to replace it. So those are the things I'm looking for.
So whenever you went out there, you said earlier you don't like to hide the numbers. You're pretty transparent with all that.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you had mentioned 90. Is that what you ended up settling on, or what did the negotiation look like?
That is a great point. So I told him, let me get the contractors out here and I will share the contractor quotes with you. I will even share the contractor with you and say, look, if you want to go do this, you can do it. Like, I'm giving you full boat. You see it all. And so I'll let the seller decide if that's what he wanted to do. And he said, I've got no interest, but if you want to share it to me, cool. I will look at it. So called a couple contractors. Actually, I called 4 of them. Only got 1 of them out there. So that's a typical situation we have right now. It's really hard to find skilled labor. So met 1 out there, got the quote from the one guy, which is also great because a lot of times you'll meet the one guy and you never get the quote. But I literally got the quote the next day. He did all the math, called the places he needed to call to get the materials, and said, here's the price. And so he gave me the price. And the price was about $12,000 more than I thought it was going to be. And so I basically put all the information in a spreadsheet and sent it to the seller and said, here's the quote, here's my spreadsheet, this is the amount of money I'm going to make. And so when I sent him that quote, I reduced the price from 90 to 70 because by the time I paid all the people I had to pay and get the house completely done at an ARV of 135, I'm going to make $12,500. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole lot of risk. Like, $12,000 does sound like a lot of money. So don't get me wrong. $12,000 is a lot of money. That's like 2.5 trips to Disney for the family, right? So definitely nothing to sneeze at, but at the same time, think about all the risk that has to go down, right? Like, we got to make sure we got those numbers correct, because right. 12,000 turns into negative 2,000 pretty quickly with one wrong turn. So bad septic system can easily turn that, and you don't know that until you flush, right?
Right. So whenever you were getting back to that seller and you had to make that reduction from 90 to 70, which is quite significant.
Oh, it's huge.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I can tell you how I felt about it. I didn't think it was going to get the deal done. Like, I told the contractor, based on the quote he sent me, I called him and said, look, is there any way this can be lower? Like, what do we have to do to lower it? Because I just don't think this is going to work. And I don't think I'll be able to buy it. And I hate for this guy to sell the house at that price because he should get more, right? Mm-hmm. So I talked to the contractor for a few minutes. There's really nothing we can cut. The $32,000 was the quote. So the $32,000 that we were spending, I mean, the windows are old and it needs new windows. Mm-hmm. The back porch has to be rebuilt. There are just so many things. The driveway needs to be scraped and new gravel put down. And so every single turn we took, it really needs to be done. You know, there are just things that have to be done. It needs new flooring, needs new countertops. So there's just so many things that add up pretty quickly. The cost of materials is so much higher today than it was this time last year. So when we're factoring in all those things, that's just where the number is. I couldn't not fix the driveway. I couldn't just leave the deck in the condition it was in. So I sent the seller the message. I'm like, hey, I totally understand if this number doesn't work for you. Here are all the numbers. We put all these things together and you can go make $12,000. So understand that I want to do what's best for you, Mr. Seller. Again, my buddy, he's a great agent. If you want to go do these things, and he's kind of a skilled guy, the seller is, so he could do some of these things personally. Mm-hmm. And he's got a job where he's working a lot of hours, so he doesn't necessarily want to do them. So he looked at it, he talked to a few people, and he said, honestly, you've been so upfront with me that I still feel good at selling it to you at 70 just because I see how you're doing this and I see what you've got to do to fix it. Mm-hmm. And so he said 70 works for me. So we're under contract at 70 and I'm going to close it next week.
Awesome. Honesty wins sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. I frankly think it wins every time. It is the best policy, they say.
Fair enough. I'll agree with that.
Those same people that say you make the money when you buy.
That's
They
right.
say honesty is the best policy, and it has turned out to be true for me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this property specifically. So, other than the fact that, oh, this is a house that I can flip and sell, is there anything about it in particular, maybe in terms of location or just the house itself, that kind of drew you towards it, that you thought, oh, this would actually be a really good one for me?
Nope, just flip it. No, I'm kidding.
That would be a fair answer.
That's a good answer. No, I will say that I do like this particular house. It's all one level. It's actually 3 bedroom, 1 bath. I would love to figure out a way to make it 1.5, but it's 960 square feet, so there's really just not a way to configure it that gives me that extra half bath. So that's one thing that I really wish we could do differently that we're just not going to be able to do. There's a high demand for affordable housing, and so if you looked on the MLS right now and you looked for under 150,000 that had new cabinets new countertops and new appliances and a new HVAC system that we're going to have to put in, it's not there. It doesn't exist. So for me, I do try to look for homes that can be a great home for somebody, right? So I'm not interested in buying a house for $250, putting $100 in it and selling it for $500. That just is not attractive to me. I would much rather find a house for $70, put $35 in it or $40 in it, and then sell it for $135 and help someone move from an apartment to their house, or somebody who's lived in a trailer park or a mobile home that's on rented land and they're able to now own their own place and get out of the rental world. That to me feels better, and I enjoy doing it more. And taking a home from where it's just not in good shape and then making it a solid, safe, and secure structure, that feels like the right thing for me to do. So.
Do you think that sort of emotional romance that you just touched on, like, bringing someone from here to there and doing a good thing, do you think that comes from being an agent? Do you think you'd still feel the same way if you were not an agent?
I think it comes from growing up in that environment myself. I think being an agent certainly helps because I see it so often. We get called a good bit to go do analysis on other rental property and other homes that are in some level of distress. So we get those calls often. And so I walk in houses that have mold all over the ceiling, and I walk in houses that have holes in the floor that you can see the outside from the inside, and they're just not safe. And so I constantly have a reminder of this is how some people live. And so my wife makes fun of me because I'm not emotional. I am. When it comes to housing, it's very black and white for me. It's very numbers driven. But at the same time, when I think about these situations, if I can do that deal twice at the same time that somebody else can do that other deal I described at once, I'm doing twice as much good. Like, I'm doing twice as much work, even though it's probably the same amount of work, or even a little less work. It just feels better to have that end product that somebody can call home that really hasn't had a home before. Like, those are the typical buyers that we sell to.
Right. Yeah, I've heard you describe yourself as not being emotional before, but I disagree because of what you just said. You're always very in tune with not just the house and the numbers and the hard data, but what is it doing for someone else and the community as a whole, I think.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the other things I was going to say, if somebody's doing the math at home, they're looking at this and going, wait, 70, quote for 32, 135, you're making a ton of money. There are other costs that HGTV doesn't tell you. Right?
That is true.
So let's go through the numbers, and that's why I have this notebook in front of me, because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So I'm buying it for 70, right? But we talked about, how did you find this deal? There's another agent involved, right? So he should get paid. Now, he didn't ask me to pay him, but it's the right thing to do. He brought the deal to me. I'm going to make money, so I need to compensate him accordingly, right? So there's another agent involved. So he's getting $2,000. I'm an agent, so I work for Keller Williams. So Keller Williams needs to get their share, right? So I'm paying commission, $2,000 to Keller Williams, $2,000 to the other real estate agency. So that's $4,000. So really 70 turned into 74 real quick, right?
Immediately.
Yeah. And then there's a little bit of closing costs involved. So you got to put in about another $1,000 for title insurance and attorney that's going to close the deal. So we're at 75. Then you got about $4,000 in that new HVAC unit. So now we're at 79. And we still haven't gotten to the contractor. So we're at 79 now. That 70 turned into 80 real quick. So then we've got 32,000 that we're paying the contractor that's going to do all the windows and all the things I told you about. So by the time you put that 32 on top of the 80, we're now at 112, I think. And so let's call it 110. 110 to 112 is where we're going to be by the time that all shakes out. So then 135 is the after repair value, right? So then by HGTV numbers, we're making 25 grand, right?
That's true.
Oh, but wait, there's more. So you've got to sell it on that side. So now I've got commission back to Keller. I've got commission to the other agent that happens to sell it. So that's 6% total, 3% from each agent, right? So 6% comes off of that 135. Typically in that price point, we're paying closing costs, 3% closing costs. I'm factoring that in. There's another 1% that sometimes, somehow, randomly goes away. That might be property tax that gets paid. That might be some insurance that we need to pay. There's 3% in closing costs that we're factoring in, but there's also prepaid items. So if you're getting 100% financing, the bank is going to want you to escrow your taxes and insurance. So on top of those prepaids, you've got to fund that escrow account to get it started so that they can cover your taxes and insurance for you. So that fund has to get started. Then there's just randomly, maybe we didn't replace the water heater and it's old, and the buyer says, hey, I'd buy this house if you replace the water heater. I've got that 1% in there so that I can say yes to those kinds of things.
Right.
So roughly another $1,300 that I'm planning on losing, right? And if I don't, great, we made a little extra, but it's not a lot extra. So when you factor in all those numbers, that 135 at closing turns into 122.5, and then we've got 110 in it. So that's $12,500. If we got it, like if we nailed it. Now,
how often do you nail it?
Never. Like there's always something. Like inevitably there will be, when we start tearing off that deck, there's going to be a rotten board behind that deck that wasn't calculated. And he's going to be like, hey, we've got this, it's called a seal on the edge of the house. So we've got this seal that we need to replace. That wasn't in the quote. It's an extra $150. Write that check, right? And then when you're doing the HVAC, hey, we quoted the unit and the Freon, but we didn't quote the ducts, and there's an entire duct missing because some little varmints got in there and ripped it up, right? So, okay, well, we got to get the new ducts in there, another $400, let's call it, right? So sign that check. So those things almost never work out exactly like you planned. Now, at the same time, that 135 ARV might turn into 138, right? It is certainly possible in the next 3 months that the market has gone up enough to give us 138 instead of 135. Those things happen all the time. We could list at 135 and 3 people want to buy it and they bid each other up to 141. That can happen. It could also sit on the market for 2 months and I reduce the price to 133. So there is a significant amount of risk that comes with this process. And so you got to think about all those kinds of things.
For sure, yeah. So you're closing in about a week.
That's right.
Is the work going to start pretty much immediately, or?
Yes. Well, yes. And when you order windows right now, there's a 16-week lag time. So the minute the ink is on the paper, I'm calling the contractor and saying, order the windows. He's already got the measurements. He's ready to go. He's waiting on the phone call. So yes, work will start immediately. Now, it depends on where his crew is on next Thursday, and can they get there next Thursday, or is it going to be Friday? Is it going to be the following Monday? Yes, we're going to get started right away. So this is part 1 of this probably 3-part series. So we will probably put some pictures in here for you, and you can see in part 1 what the house looks like currently. We'll do a part 2. Who knows? We may be on site to do part 2 and do this kind of mixed in with all these other podcast episodes. So it might be a month before we get to part 2. And then at the end, part 3 will include finished product, marketing plan, and what happened. And so it's probably going to be a 3 to 4 month process. Most flips are.
Right. And would you say, like, if you had to put this one on a 1-10 scale, 10 being, oh man, this is like almost worthy of being demolished. Where are you putting this one?
This house, as far as like the quality of the house?
Yeah.
It's not demolished. It's nowhere near the hardest flip I've ever done as far as like the amount of work. So I bought a house one time for $8,700 and should have bulldozed it. I think I bought it in 2014. I can't remember exactly. 109 West Lakeshore Drive in Tunnel Hill. It's still there, and the house is beautiful now because we bought it for $8,700 and we sold it for, I think it was $127.
Oh my God.
But I made like 10 grand on that house because it took forever and there's so much. We probably should have bulldozed it. Like if I had it to do all over again, we should have just bulldozed it.
Right.
But it was a great flip. I mean, we took it down to the studs, did everything. This house, nowhere near that. I mean, the floor structure is solid. There's one rotten board on the back, which is close to that deck that we've been talking about. So other than that one rotten board right there, and probably the ends of those floor joists we'll have to replace, it's a pretty easy flip, honestly. But the issue is just we can't find labor. You know, we talked about in This Week in Housing a few minutes ago that labor's hard to find. Skilled labor's hard to find. And that's why Zillow's kind of stopping their program, or at least that's what they're telling you. Mm-hmm. I'm having a hard time finding it. And when I do find it, it costs more. Then the materials cost more, the labor costs more. So that $32,000 bill that the contractor is going to give us would have been $22,000 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So when I was meeting with the guy, I felt like that number was going to be 20 grand. I was like, look, we can get this done for 18 to 20 grand. Because I'm still thinking about the other flips we've done, and those are just not the numbers today. Yeah. Wage inflation is happening, real inflation is happening all across the board. So, you know, expect those prices to continue to rise.
So, final question to kind of wrap this up. You mentioned the ARV is 135. Mm-hmm. So, what kind of finishes might someone in our market expect at the 135 price point?
Yes, that is a great question. So a lot of flippers, if you're an investor and you're listening to this and you're thinking about getting into the investment game, I would say one of the biggest mistakes people make is they try to make it too nice. Right? You have to think about your target market, right? So as we described earlier, my target is someone who is a first-time home buyer, that this is going to be their first home and they've been renting before, or their situation has not allowed them to own before for whatever reason. So maybe they're living with family, whatever it may be, this is going to be their first house. So in light of that, I don't have to go stainless steel appliances and granite countertops. What I need is nice, clean, fresh countertops, right? Doesn't have to be granite, doesn't have to be, I don't have to put wainscoting on the bottom of the walls. I don't have to do chair rail, right? I don't have to have travertine tile in the shower. I need a shower that doesn't leak, right? I need solid structure. I need doors that lock and windows that open, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the things we're doing. We're not getting we're not getting a 24 SEER HVAC system that, is the highest top of the line with the Nest thermostat. Yeah. We're getting a thermostat that works. You want to be 70 degrees, you can put it on 70. That's right. What we're doing.
So utility, essentially.
Yes. Functional, safe, sound, and secure, and good-looking house. Mm-hmm. We're going to paint it. It's going to be nice.
Fair enough. I like that answer. Right. And I think that is a great way to cap this off. Cool. So in the coming weeks, maybe 3 weeks or so, we'll do a walkthrough of the house and see how everything's going.
I hope it's 3 weeks from now and 4 not weeks, 3 months from now. But
3 months, 3 years.
Soon enough, we will be back.
When we get there, we'll maybe shoot there, like you said, or some video and update everyone. That'll be part 2, and then we'll do a third part once we're ready to list it, I guess, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. So on that note, thank you guys for watching. Again, I'm Corey Shields.
I'm Michael Williams.
And we will see you next time.